welcome to this week's episode of the
Geek Buddies.
Hey! We are back at it this week to have some fun talking about the big news going on in the world of geekery. We're coming a little bit early this week. Normally we drop on a Friday, but we had to talk about this one. We're going to talk about that Superman casting. We're going to talk about some new trailers, some Tron 3 casting, but get into our main topic, which is going to be Indiana Jones, and counting down our personal top fives, well, top fours, I guess, of Indiana Jones in celebration or in honor of Dial of Destiny coming out this weekend. Let's introduce ourselves and jump into the show. I am the outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel. I am a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor. And as being a television actor, from time to time, you get this thing called mailbox money. It's residuals that kind of just show up. A little bit of money that you get here and there for things that you've done in the past. I've got a residual check today. I'm just going to do one of these. Look at that bad guy.
Come on now.
If you've ever wondered how much money you make from residuals, it's about that.
That's about how much.
Whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
I want to get that 1 cent check. That's exactly how I feel. Want to get that 1 cent check. Yeah, we got a lot to get into here, and we're going to power through with a very exhausted Michael Vogel, who's been doing a number of things today, a number of meetings, a number of workouts, and he's on his way to a vacation for a week. So we appreciate you being here, Michael. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna tell you something. There's some times where you get into like a good 48 to 54 hours where every single hour is booked.
Yeah.
We are reaching the tail end of it. And then I'm leaving for 5 days and I'm not talking to anybody and I'm just going to drink in a pool. So that's where we're at. We'll see what we're on the tail end. We're on fumes, but they're exciting fumes. And I'm ready to do this thing.
This is your last set
This is
of
it.
the workout. This is going to give you the biggest pump, as Arnold would say.
That's
so you're
right.
ready to go. We're ready to go. All right. For those of you new to us, thank you so much for taking a chance on us here at the Geek Buddies. For those who come back every week, thank you very much. We love you madly. You know how the show works. Each of us brings up a geek news item. We talk about it amongst ourselves, and we take a big break and jump into our main geek news item. And our main item this week is, of course, talking about Indiana Jones and where we rank these 4 Indiana Jones movies. And maybe Shannon and I will throw where we rank our 5th one because we've actually seen it. But okay. Either way, let's get it going. Michael Vogel, what do you got?
Well, DC, guys, it's still here. Despite what the Flash box office would have you think, DC is still kicking. And we had some big news this week. We've been talking about this Superman casting. They've been looking at everybody. They narrowed it down, and they have now narrowed it down to our Clark Kent and our Lois Lane. David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, Mrs. Maisel, are the new Superman and Lois for James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which he is currently writing and will be directing and will kick off the Gunn Saffron DCU. So before we jump into our other piece of DC news, gentlemen, we talked about this. I feel like we were all sort of in this general vicinity, kind of thought this was where we would land. I know that Shannon McClung, as the president of the Nicholas Hoult fan club, might have some misgivings here, but how are you guys feeling about this?
You know, I think it's great. It's great. Rachel Brosnahan is, she's going to be fantastic. I went back and watched a little bit of Hollywood, the Ryan Murphy show on Netflix, and watched a little bit of David Corenswet, and he's very, very charming. I don't think I got into the meat of the show to find out how deep his well runs, but you know what? First impressions, I thought he was really, really good. Am I disappointed about Nicholas Hoult? Yes. Was I on the phone with him the other night? Yes. Is that true? No. But I mean, now that the search is on for Lex Luthor, I kind of hope that he's not up for that. I feel like he's actually too young to be Lex. But yeah, I think it's really, really exciting. So I'm really, really curious. And, we only have to wait a mere 2 years to find out how it turns out.
Well, he's a good-looking dude, man. I watched We Own the City, which is damn good. If you're looking for a fix after The Wire, after you've watched The Wire, with a little David Simon fix, go and watch We Own the City, because that is a damn good show. And he is almost unrecognizable in the show from what you see him now. It's much more scruffy. He's a little more doughier. He's got a short buzz haircut. And so he's a little bit, this was more of a character work that he was doing there in the show. It wasn't a big part of the show, but it was in almost all the episodes. So I was familiar with him to that degree. I haven't seen Pearl. I haven't seen the Hollywood show you're referencing, Shanna, but clearly this is someone who James Gunn feels can carry the weight of Superman and Clark Kent into his version of the universe and put that tentpole very firmly in the ground with the American flag attached to it, of course. And then over to Rachel Brosnahan. This just seemed like a no-brainer. As soon as all of us heard it, and I think a majority of people heard that name, we knew this is the way to go. So it may have been that he went backwards to forwards, which is, I know Brosnahan's the one for me. Who is going to have the best chemistry with her? Saw David Corenswet, felt they fit. And I know I've seen people complaining, and we got the memes on our Geek Buddies thread about how close he looks to Henry Cavill, which has pissed some people off. And I don't understand that. He was never going to go with that older version of Superman and Henry Cavill. So why not a younger version, which doesn't rule out that down the road, if this is all a success, Henry Cavill could come back, play the older version of the David Corenswet Superman, and it would be believable for us. So for me, I don't have a problem with. I'm just saying.
Why are you? It's just like throwing a little bit of a meat at somebody and then just pulling it away. Like, that's not happening. Henry Cavill is done. Look, there is no Cavill's gonna come back, and in the 11th hour he's gonna fly in.
Michael Keaton came back. I'm just saying, you never know. So anyway, I like the choices. Now let's move. And I think Nicholas Hoult is going to be playing Lex Luthor or Brainiac, one of the two at some point.
Or Bruce Wayne.
Or, man, that could be really interesting. Right. We mentioned that too. Bruce Wayne is a possibility as well. But either way, I liked it all. But we should go to our Superman expert, Michael Vogel. Your thoughts on these casting choices?
You know, it's like we said this every time we've talked about the casting choices, but James Gunn's good at casting. And these 100%. Two look great. The whole Henry Cavill of it all. I know that some people love what he did, but you have to admit that Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman to either version of Justice League and his wonky lip, like it was a bumpy road.
Yes.
And I think that the thing about Henry Cavill, and I think Henry Cavill is a great actor. I think the thing about Henry Cavill is, and I think this is why people get upset, the promise of Henry Cavill was always there, and we never fully realized the Henry Cavill Superman that people, I think, wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a shame that they could have been the Superman that could have been. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and I think that everyone on this podcast would disagree about them, but I think I'm right. But I think that here, look, there's a lot of questions about what this new DCU is going to be. There's a lot of questions about the tone, the vibe, the feel. But I think as a first step, like this is literally like we aside from Gunn and Safran coming on and Gunn doing his big announcement, letting us know the movies that were going to happen. This is the first official, real step of what we are getting ready to see. And I think as a first step, it's a good step. Mm-hmm. I think to the Brosnahan, because I think he looks great. I think he's charming. I think a lot of it is I think with it, when it comes to Superman and Kal-El, a lot of it is going to come into what is Gunn going to do with Kal-El.
Right.
You know, like there's a lot of, there's, you know, whether it be more hearkening back to the Christopher Reeve Donner Superman, whether it's going to be, I don't know if I quite fit in and I'm a little bit pained and troubled by it, like Snyder did, or somewhere in between. There's a lot of questions. The constant is kind of Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of questions about what you do with Kal-El and his relationship with humanity and his relationship with Krypton. Lois Lane is Lois Lane. Mm-hmm. And I would say that when you look at particularly the past few years of Lois Lane in movies, that's also where people have really dropped the ball. So I think the fact that we've got Rachel Brosnahan is a very good indicator that we might be on a better path.
Are we getting the 50s quippy dialogue that we got in the 1978 Superman, or is it going to be something more modern in her quippiness?
Well, that's a really good question. I think, and there's a taste level to that. Like, I think Lois Lane is always quippy, And
Right, sure.
like, I mean, whether it be Erica Durance in Smallville or Dana Delaney in the animated series, like they're like every version of Lois Lane is a little bit of a smart ass quippy. Like that's a thing. So I do think the chemistry between Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder is hard to top.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the real question.
And something that I think will be interesting as well is, Margot Kidder found out or Lois Lane found out that Clark Kent was Superman in Superman 2, and then forgot by the end. Man of Steel, Lois finds out real fast,
Quicker than that,
that Clark Kent is Superman. I'm curious where this is going to land, because part of the fun is the fact that she doesn't know that her Nebuchadnezzar coworker is this guy that she is completely enthralled with. I hope we get some of that fun.
James Gunn tends, in my opinion of him, tends to really love a little bit of the classic stuff, a lot of the Silver Age stuff in comics in general. So I feel like his vibe is, let's at least spend some amount of time, even if it's not the entire first movie, let's spend a good amount of time playing that classic love triangle. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, because I mean, you want to show her as intelligent and capable, and what's been the big strike against Lois is more modern audiences have looked at this as like, come on, she wouldn't figure out that a guy with glasses would look like that kind of thing. How are they going to play with that? I'll be very curious how James Gunn does the modern take of that. And another thing that I'll throw out there, I mean, what if Rachel outshines David in the role? Will that cause bumpiness in the film or in the future of those two as well? Because she's a much more accomplished actress, led an entire series for multiple seasons by herself, and one of the heralded series, not just Rules of Engagement and her shit on CBS. Like, this was a series that won awards and shit. I'm just saying, there's a difference. A lot of
people leave Patrick Warburton alone, sir.
Lobbing a bomb at Rules of Engagement.
Just saying, there are shows that people lead, and you're like, who the fuck's the lead of that? And then there are shows that people lead and they win awards. There's two different, Winona Earp is a damn good show. They ain't giving any awards, and the lead is a good actress. But I mean, like, Brosnahan is exploded with awards and stuff. So there's a possibility she could outshine David here.
Maybe, although, I mean, look, go ahead, Shannon.
Well, no, I was going to say maybe that's also the extensive casting that they have done. Like that, they narrowed it down to these kind of three couples. If the article in Variety or Deadline is to be believed, they had a day of testing. The next day, Emma Mackey was the Lois for everybody, and I think the intention is to have them as equals. And if there was any danger of that not happening, that sometimes the best performer isn't always the best performer for the role, and so you hope that this is the pair that is going to not only shine individually but make each other shine.
Yeah,
I hope that's true, Michael, because George Judy told me I didn't get to play Polonius. Who's the dad in Hamlet?
Polonius?
Claudius.
I didn't get to play Claudius because he needed me better as Hamlet's dad. That's what he told me. I don't know if he told me the truth, and that's why he gave it to our friend Joe Knezovich. But I don't know if that's true.
He did not tell you the truth.
I'm
not saying I don't think you could have done it, but that is what you're like, hey, so I really wanted to play the Cowardly Lion, but you cast me as one of the trees that throws the apples. That's because I needed you to be that tree. I've seen you throw an apple, and you are my guy.
To be fair, Joe's resume is much more extensive than mine, so clearly George Judy made the right choice. What else did James Gunn have to say, Mikey? As a segue,
I can't have someone with a cannon like that be a lion.
Oh. Well, yeah. So James Gunn, in addition to officially casting his Superman and Lois, had a couple other things to say about the superhero genre this week in an interview on the Inside of You podcast, where he said he thinks there's too many superhero movies and television shows out right now. And in talking about DC, he says we're going to be very careful with the product that we put out and making sure everything is as good as it possibly can be. He went on to say that people have gotten really lazy with their superhero stories. And they've gotten to a place where, oh, it's a superhero, let's make a movie about it. And then, oh, let's make a sequel because the first one did pretty well. And then they aren't thinking about why is this story special? What makes this story stand apart from other stories? What is the story at the heart of it all? Why is this character important? What makes this story different that it fills a need for people that in theaters that people will go see? And then he continued on saying, people have gotten a little lazy and there's a lot of biff, pow, bam stuff happening in movies that I'm watching, third acts in superhero films, where I just really don't feel like there's a rhyme or reason to what's happening. I don't care about the characters and it's gotten too generic. And he says the solution is having different genres within the larger superhero movie genre, like a serious superhero movie, a comedic superhero movie, a murder mystery superhero movie, but with he wants to see different types of stories as opposed to seeing the same story told over and over again. So, from the guy that's now running one of the two big superhero franchises, that's a lot of opinions. And you have to wonder how much of that is directed at his competition and how much of that is directed to the movies that are coming out of his own house. So I know John had some opinions about this on Twitter. I couldn't help but notice. So Johnny, why don't you take it away and let us know your thoughts on what Gunn had to say?
Look, I'm not saying James Gunn is wrong. All right. I'm not saying that. I think James Gunn's got every right to have his opinion. But when you're the head of arguably an arm of the studio in DC Studios with Peter Safran, I think it's the wrong thing to say to criticize other creators' work. It's not like James has made these blockbusters every time out. And it isn't like you can't pick apart some of the story beats and storylines and some of the humor that doesn't work and some of the biff bang pow stuff that he does in his movies and go like, did we need that? That seemed a bit extraneous. He isn't making perfectly untouchable films, for God's sakes. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, you could argue, but even that has a couple of plot holes in certain sections. So I don't have a problem with someone as a pundit, a critic, a reviewer, even a fellow filmmaker saying something like this, right? It may cause danger. You're insulting other creators in essence. But as the head of a studio or arm of the studio, I think it's poor form. I think it's bad to criticize. And people say to me all the time when I bring this up that, no, Feige and Gunn, they get along great. I think he was taking shots at Feige by doing that. Oh, let's make a hero out of anybody. Ironically, even though that's how they got Guardians of the Galaxy to get done. And he may have been taking shots at Sony, certainly for Venom and Morbius and these other things. That's a more valid criticism if his mindset was talking about Sony. But if he was also throwing in some Marvel stuff and lumping some of that in there, I think it's a bit of poor form considering how nobody wanted a Guardians of the Galaxy movie until Feige went to bat for James. And don't forget that a woman wrote that script first for the first Guardians of the Galaxy before James did. And arguably the better script of all three of his movies is the first one. So these are these things that you have to have a little more perspective, I think. And there's nothing wrong with his opinion in terms of if you're a pundit or a fan or a critic or a reviewer or whatever. But as the head of a studio, I just thought for me, it hit the wrong note. And this isn't about him crucifying himself so we can create great superhero movies. Cut that hero worshiping nonsense out. This is about the fact that he is saying stuff that to me I think was out of turn for the position that he's in. My 2 cents.
But do you have a strong opinion?
But I respect James and I love his work. It's just nothing's untouchable, for God's sakes.
Shannon, what about you? How do you feel about Gunn's take on the current state of the superhero cinema?
I mean, I don't think he's telling tales outside of school per se. I think we all have opinions about not just superhero films, but any medium that we all love. Anytime there is an explorer treasure hunt movie, it is always going to be compared to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, I don't know if we're ever going to hit the explorer renaissance the way that we've been in the superhero genre for over 20 years. But I don't know. I feel like part of it is, especially, I think if you remove Marvel from it, when you look at the third act, bam, pow, I think it's more a comment on sort of the superhero film industrial complex. That here are the things that have happened in the past because this is what happens in your third act. I think when you look back at the beginning of Marvel, you look back at the stakes of Iron Man 1, What was that big third act battle? It was a grudge match between Tony Stark and Obadiah Stane. What was Obadiah Stane's plan other than kills Tony Stark? We don't know, but it was very small. I mean, even the first Thor, it's like we're in this tiny New Mexico town. We go to Asgard. You go to Man of Steel. I mean, it is the world is about to end. You go to Suicide Squad, the world is about to end. You go to Batman versus Superman, the world is about to end. I think it might be more of a comment. I mean, I don't think he's completely excluding Marvel, but I think it might be more of a comment on his predecessors, because with every time, if you're saving the world every time, it starts to lose its meaning. And yes, you can't not talk about the Sony picture universe of Marvel characters and be like, why did we need this? But I do understand John's point of view in that, is this for someone to come in and work for James Gunn in this capacity? It's like, wow, if this doesn't turn out, and it's not always a director's fault when a movie doesn't turn out. There are many, many things that can go wrong. It's a giant machine with a lot of moving parts. But is there a fear of, oh man, if this doesn't turn out, if we don't just nail it, James Gunn's going to be making some sort of veiled comment on my abilities as a storyteller. So, I mean, I do understand John's point of view. I don't think I'm quite as passionate about it, though.
I think we all generally agree. I'll say it in a slightly different way. I think, to Shannon's point, James Gunn's right. I mean, aside from whether or not he should have said it all, what he says is correct. Like, and I think we said this exact same thing last week when we were talking about the Kraven trailer, which is like, why does this matter? Aside from the fact that you own this character and you're trying to trot him out, why is this movie special amongst all the other movies? What are you trying to tell? And I think that's true of a lot of superhero movies. I think it's true of some Marvel movies. I think it's certainly true of some Sony movies, and it's true of DC movies. I also think that he isn't excluding DC. I think Shannon's right. That man got the job for a reason. I think he walked himself right into DC and they said, what are we doing wrong? And he said some version of what he's saying here. So I think this is stuff that he said. Now, to John's point, there's a way to say the true things that he said without saying some of the I don't think he's taking a shot at anybody specifically. I think he is kind of talking generally, but it's impossible to look at that and not do what all of us said. What was he talking about this? He's talking about this, talking about this. And I think this falls under the category of the way that Kevin Feige doesn't tweet and James Gunn tweets a lot. Yes. This is that same category of James Gunn. If you're going to be the ambassador of an entire superhero cinematic universe, let's cut the negative and stick to the positives. Like someone says, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with the state of superhero movies? Is there superhero fatigue? I don't think there's superhero fatigue. I'm really excited about telling different superhero movies. I want to do a superhero comedy. I want to do like a superhero murder mystery. I think the more variety that we give people, and so it's not just the next big superhero movie, but this is a superhero movie that does this, and this is a superhero movie that does this. That's what I'm interested in, and I want to find those creators that are going to do that. I just said the best part of what he said without saying, let me tell you what's wrong with superhero movies that are out currently. And I think he needs to do a little bit more of that. And you just sort of stay on the straight and narrow, stay on the positive, stay on this is what I'm excited about without saying this is what other people are doing wrong.
That's what concerns me. It's the hubris. And listen, if you're attacking DC before you're attracting directors like James Wan, like Patty Jenkins, and your attack, those kinds of things, and Zack Snyder. And to me, I just don't know if that's necessarily the best course, but there's other people supported what he had to say, but I just think when you're in charge of something,
it's a fine line because he didn't attack anybody. Like, it's not like he came out and said, let me tell you why the Snyderverse sucked. Like, he didn't say anything specifically, and there's so many superhero, we live in the superhero era. So it's impossible, like, to defend him a little bit. You can't point to anything and say he was like right. He could go into a meeting with Zack Snyder, Patty Jenkins, Kevin Feige, Amy Pascal, anybody he wants, and say, I wasn't talking about you.
Yeah.
And like he wasn't. So he covered himself fine, but I think in general it's better when you just stick to the positive.
Yeah. You better nail Superman. You better nail Superman Legacy. I'll tell you that right now.
I hope there's no Biff Bams or Pals in it.
It better be no.
God forbid.
All right, let's move on to a real quick topic. Let's do 2 or 3 minutes on this. It was just announced today, earlier this afternoon, that Evan Peters will be jumping into Tron 3. He's going to be cast along Jared Leto. I saw this. I couldn't help but put this up. There it is. The Dahmer versus Leto there. Very funny stuff. So, what do you? Tron 3 is happening. Supposed to start shooting in August. I know there's strikes going on, everything like this, but apparently it's still on track to start shooting in August. Jared Leto is your lead. Jared Leto, who's shown recently not the greatest person to put butts in seats. You throw in Evan Peters, whose name has really been building with some of the work like Mare of Easttown and, of course, Quicksilver and other things that he's done. He's been really shining in. So do you like him being a part of this? And do we need a Tron 3, though, with these two dudes? Like, are you guys excited about this in any way, shape, or form?
Just think everybody should be really thankful that those Tron light cycles just opened up at Disney World in Orlando. Because
is this a movie being made to promote that, Michael? Is it?
I mean, I'm not going to say it's a movie made to promote that, but the Tron light cycles in Shanghai Disney or Hong Kong Disney, whichever park they're in, I think maybe Shanghai, super popular. Everybody loves them. They have now brought them to Orlando. Right. Lines all through Tomorrowland to ride that thing. It's apparently a super fun roller coaster. I can't wait to go back and ride it. But the fact that Disney has an attraction in the park that they are getting behind and promoting is at least in part a reason why they are going to continue to revive this franchise. Now, look, there might be a great take on the movie. There might be a really good idea. But yeah, Tron is one of those Hollywood anomalies. That movie came out back in the day and it bombed.
Yes.
The original. And then it became a cult classic.
Yeah.
Tron Legacy came out, and aside from a rockin' soundtrack, it's not on anybody's top 10 movies list.
It bombed as well, yeah.
There was an animated TV series that was decent, but not like blowing anybody's socks off. And now we're getting a third movie years later. Almost a decade later. Yeah. And so it's a weird franchise, but there's just something about it that keeps people keeping on. Like, I'm not unexcited about a Tron 3.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Yeah. I love the Tron movies. I hope they get it right, but we'll see. Shannon, your thoughts. Is this a little too, are these guys going to put people as butts in seats? Or what do you think about this?
I mean, you can look at Tron Legacy and you know, Jeff Bridges being in it didn't really put butts in seats. Neither did Garrett Hedlund. So I think a movie like this, I mean, the star is the property, but the property doesn't have the strongest history. But it's very eye catching. I think if they can get the right story, I think a Tron movie could be really popular. I mean, the thing that kept people out of watching Tron Legacy was people walked out of the theater and were like, meh. Okay. Yeah. But Joaquin Ronin, the Norwegian director,
he's directing
he directed the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And you want to talk about a franchise that was really losing steam. I actually thought that movie was okay.
Yeah.
The fifth movie is better than the fourth movie.
Oh, the fourth movie is real bad.
Yeah.
But you know, the Evan Peters, Jared Leto, they're people you can put on a poster. So
true.
If the story is, if the movie turns out well, because visually, no doubt they're going to nail it. They know exactly the world. The visuals they nailed a long time ago. Right. They were just waiting for the technology to catch up. Now they just need the story to be in a place that is going to, get an audience on board.
Yeah, it's going to be called Tron Ares. There you go, Tron Ares.
Listen, I mean, it's a weird thing because Shannon's right. Like, they've caught my attention.
Right.
And Tron as an idea is really cool. And in execution, it's never been as cool as the idea, but maybe they'll finally get it right.
We'll see. He hasn't directed a film since Maleficent, Mistress of Evil in 2019.
And that is not great.
So
that movie is not great.
We'll see what the balance is. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump into some trailers, and then also get into our Indiana Jones discussion right after this.
Take
it away, Shannon.
A week with trailers. So starting off, speaking of DC, we have a limited series coming to Max called Superpowered, the DC story that happens to be produced by our good friend and friend of the show, Mr. Jonathan Gabay. So this chronicles the I texted him right beforehand just to clarify. I'm like, you're a producer on it, right? And he's like, yeah, why? And I was like, just wait.
Mind your business.
Yeah,
Mind your business. Mind your business. Stay in your lane. Produce. But this is a docuseries that chronicles the history of DC, starting back from when Superman made his first appearance in Action Comics, and in the trailer for this, I mean, it shows a lot of the movies that we've gotten in the last 5 to 10 years, and this is coming at a really interesting time because kind of on the heels of The Flash kind of petering out of the box office, the potential excitement with Gunn and Safran rebooting the universe, and now with the announcement of our Superman and Lois, now we get a little bit of the history that went behind DC Comics. And in terms, I love a good docuseries, especially about pop culture. And this one seems very, very watchable to me. But I'll throw it over to you, gentlemen. What did you think of our first look at the Jonathan Gabay produced Superpowered, the DC story?
Yeah, I liked the trailer. I thought the trailer was great. Very inspirational, certainly as it is. But I couldn't help let go of that gnawing feeling of all these people who have bombed or been let go by Disney, who are the talking heads that they show in the trailer. Some of those films that bombed and didn't do well. And so it's a weird time for a film like this to be coming out, but maybe it's also the right time because it'll kind of get us back in touch with why we love these DC characters, these DC stories, and the potential of what's to come here with James Gunn and Peter Safran and what they're doing, because Blue Beetle being kind of the soft opening of James Gunn's DC universe. So in that way, I had to kind of navigate my feelings as I was watching the trailer, because Patty Jenkins is in this. The Rock is in this. There are people who have been kind of unceremoniously dumped out of DC, even though they tried to create something great, and in Patty Jenkins' case, did. I didn't see Zack Snyder, so clearly that's not the door they wanted to open or could have opened. I don't know what the behind the scenes on that is. But that being said, it was nice to feel the positivity around it, Michael, even if maybe the people who are being quoted talking about how we've got to do the right thing. We got to get back in touch with who we are, have done some, maybe not so great things behind the scenes. So I don't know. What did you think of the trailer?
I mean, I'm excited about a documentary. I have some concerns about the producer.
That's fair. That's totally
no. I'm actually really. I mean, Jonathan's been telling us about this for a while.
Yeah.
And he's been really, really excited about it. I'm
great.
really excited because
great.
it's the same creative team that did the Imagineering documentary, the 6-part Imagineering documentary that's airing on Disney Plus.
Nice.
And I've brought this up before. If you've not watched this thing, go watch it. It truly is one of my favorite documentaries I've ever watched. I've watched it more than once. I put it on sometimes when I just need to be. And it's really well done. And look, to Johnny's point, Disney in its history of the parks has a checkered past as well.
True.
There's a Michael Eisner era. There's a time when the Imagineers weren't happy. There's times when they made some decisions that were more corporate decisions and not creative decisions. And the documentary traverses all of that and talks about it. I think that when you do a documentary about DC from, as Shannon said, from Action Comics to what's happening today, you're gonna look, nobody, whether or not somebody's creative vision worked or not, whether I personally like someone's creative vision, whether or not they have stayed on with DC, everybody who got to work on these characters had an opinion about these characters and an affinity for these characters. And I think what this documentary looks like it's going to do, and I hope it does, is look, and this is true of all of us. Some of us love the Zack Snyderverse. Some of us hate the Zack Snyderverse. All of us love DC.
Yes.
So I love Black Adam. Apparently The Rock does too. I don't like The Rock's movie, but I'm interested about people talking about their take on Black Adam. A documentary is not a piece of promotional material that's supposed to just hype us up. A documentary is telling a story of everything that happened. Good, bad, this failed, this bombed. Like, so when I'm going to see something that's going to cover, I don't know how many parts it is, I forget. I think it says in the trailer. I forget if it's 5 parts or 6, 3 parts. When I'm going to see something that covers everything, I want you to talk about Christopher Reeve. I want you to talk about Smallville. I want you to talk about Lois and Clark, Superman and Lois, Superman Returns, Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman. Like, I want the whole story. So I think this is going to be really, really good. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to watch it. And then I can't wait to give Jonathan Gabay all my notes.
There.
And speaking of the 3 episodes on IMDb, they already have the episode titles up, and it is The Hero's Journey, Coming of Age, and A Better Tomorrow. And according to IMDb, all 3 of these episodes drop at the same time on Max on July 20th, Comic-Con weekend.
Oh, man.
I know.
We are going to go buy some whiskey and get wasted in the hotel room and watch some documentaries.
That'd be fun.
So that is July 20th. Our next trailer is for a new Apple series that actually, you know, it's great that Superpowered is produced by a friend of ours, because this next series has a good friend of John's. This is called The Beanie Bubble, and it is starring Zach Galifianakis and John's personal good friend, boon companion, Elizabeth Banks. So this is about Ty Warner, who was the guy behind the Beanie Babies and this craze that took over. And if you watched Apple TV's We Crash, that had Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway, really great series about the rise and fall of WeWork. This seems to be their take. It's not the same creative team, but it is the same, you know, it is Apple, the same streamer, but it's their take on the Beanie Baby craziness. I thought this trailer looked like a lot of fun. Seeing Zach Galifianakis without any sort of facial hair is real weird.
Took me out of it. I was like, who is that? Oh,
yes, me too. Like, who is this guy? Who's that guy next to John's best friend? So we'll throw this over to Johnny first. What did you think of our first look at the Beanie Bubble?
I gotta think that if I grew my hair, I might look like Galifianakis in this movie with the black hair and the kind of chubby face. So it was a really interesting look. No, this looks like a lot of fun in terms of the story that they're telling. Yes, I'm not the biggest Elizabeth Banks fan, but you know, because some of the comments about Spielberg and stuff, she's been so off base on a number of things. That being said, there are some performances from hers that I truly do enjoy. More comedic, and certainly it seems like this one has a comedic bent along with a darker edge to it. It's a bit more of a dark comedy, which I like that aspect. Plus, you get Sarah Snook, which I'm very happy to inject back into my veins as I'm missing Succession. So seeing what that whole story is, and you say the guy behind the Beanie Babies, but it seems like this series is exposing that he wasn't the only person behind the Beanie Babies. So is there going to be more of this story to be told here that maybe some of us didn't know about this kind of stuff? So I'll be very curious to see and what the end result is going to be. And I want a multi-dimensional series. I do not want man bad, woman good. I want something much more complex, much more nuanced. And Apple has done a really good job of it most of the time in their series, maybe not their movies, Ghosted, but certainly in their series. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this one is one of those ones that I can enjoy, because I'm going to be watching Hijack this weekend for sure. What's your thoughts there, Mikey?
My thought watching this was, what the fuck was wrong with us?
You act as if we're better now. What are you talking about?
No, and we're not. Like, we're still crazy human beings, but like, you know, like when you're in the crazy, you don't I mean, I was never a Beanie Baby guy.
Yeah.
But I had friends who were like all into the Beanie Babies. And like at the time you were like, yeah, sure, that's a thing. Lots of people are into this, I guess. It's cool. Like, you're a collector. But like when you go back and look at it, you're like, what was wrong with us? Like, that's wild. You know, like you were talking about the We Crashed. There's also like the Tetris movie that they had, which, you know, was interesting. I don't think it was like a home run for them, but it's another thing. Like, I do kind of love the fact that we are looking back on some of the things that we all were obsessed with and getting the full story behind it. Like when we watched the Tetris thing over here, me and some buddies, we got done with it and we're like, is that really what happened? And you look it up and you're like, yeah, it's a little bit, more dramatic, but not as out of the realm as you think it is. You're like, no, this kind of went down this way. That's crazy. And so this looks like it has that same kind of thing where you're going to get done with it and you're like, is that shit true? And you're gonna be like, man, people are wild. Like, it is just, I'm in on this. I like Elizabeth Banks. I think she's fun.
Okay.
She's a good buddy of mine. Good buddy.
Well, the Beanie bubble is popping on July 28th on Apple, and that brings us to our last trailer. This one is for the film adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's. So I did not know this until after I saw the trailer and did a little bit of research. It's based on a video game. It actually sounds like it's a lot of fun. Basically, a single dad gets hired to be a security guard at a Chuck E. Cheese showbiz pizza like a derelict restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and at night the animatronic band comes to life because it is powered by the spirits of dead kids who died at the restaurant.
Hello.
So this stars Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard. It comes out simultaneously in the theaters and on Peacock, so that's not always the best indicator. But this does look like a crazy schlocky type movie that you would watch at a drive-in in the 80s. So I'll throw it over to you, gentlemen. What did you think of our first look at Five Nights at Freddy's?
Mikey?
I am going to the theater. I watched that trailer. I was like, this is the exact kind of stupid shit that you want to get just a drunk and just a little bit high, go get a big tub of popcorn and sit in a crowded theater and watch it. Now, with this movie, I may not get the crowded theater, but I'm going to go and see it. It just looks fun. It's stupid. Stupid. But like, there is just a thing. And if you grew up in the 80s, like, and you ever went to a Showbiz Pizza or a Chuck E. Cheese, like, there you can just hear that clacking in your head of those things blinking and moving.
Oh yeah.
And like, we were so into it, but those things were creepy as fuck. And it makes sense that they should be in a horror movie.
Yeah, apparently this is, I did a trailer reaction for this earlier this week, and people were commenting who have children, and apparently there are books, there are other video games, and that girl is actually his sister, not his daughter. So I don't know. Yeah, so I didn't know that either, according to the mythology. Now, they may have changed it for the movie, but according to the mythology, I was told that that's his younger sister. So there's a lot to this that's really interesting to explore. I thought maybe it was some dude but apparently this is the truth. This is what it is about, and it can get quite gory and quite unsettling. So this may have some of that kind of, how can you call it, kind of out of left field type of horror vibe, like Mandy or these other kind of smaller horror films that have come out recently and had a little twist of humor to them along with the goriness. So we'll see how deep they go. But certainly by the end of the trailer, you're seeing these images of him out in the woods, this young kid being taken in the car. So that is not his sister. So is he having visions? Is he being visited by these things? Are they messing with his mind? And then we see that last shot of his sister, his young sister, in the taxi with one of those animatronics. And some dude is driving the taxi saying he gets all the crazies in his cab. So what does this all mean? But yes, as Michael said, it looks like a lot of fun. And it seemed like the Nicolas Cage Wall-E film was based on this kind of story. So now getting the actual source material translated or adapted rather would be interesting to see.
Yeah, this is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. I mean, this is kind of the perfect movie for October. To if you don't feel like going out one night, either going to the theater, might have the theater to yourself, or you watch it on, you get a group of people and you get it and you watch it on Peacock. So Five Nights at Freddy's comes out on Peacock and in theaters October 27th.
Perfect. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we're going to jump into our main topic, talking about our rankings for the Indiana Jones films right after this. Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say, why not start with that one? But all right, fine, fair enough. By the way, a music video was released today with John Williams' theme for the character that Phoebe Waller-Bridge plays in the film. There, so interesting. Hasn't done a music video since the 90s, and now there's a little music video kind of for that theme. So very interesting stuff. Is that right? Since Phantom Menace, I guess, with his Duel of the Fates.
I watched that Phantom Menace music video so many times leading up to that movie. I was like, guys, they're back. This is gonna be better than Empire.
Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny is coming out this weekend. I've just been reading here already. They are prognosticating Variety is $65 million, which is a good opening, but it's a $295 million movie, so you hope it might have some legs globally, but a $65 million opening domestically, which is not bad for Harrison Ford being the age he is, coming back to play this character. Shannon and I have seen Dial of Destiny. You can see our out of the theater trailer or out of theater reaction that is up on the channel as well. But Michael is not. So we're going to focus on the 4, and then maybe Shannon and I will toss in where we would rank the 5th one for right now. But
I want to know where you rank the 5th one. I will say, and I watched your out of the theater review.
Oh, yeah. 90
and
seconds that it was. Yeah.
Listen, I was happy about it. I think when we all spoke about the last we spoke about it on the show was after it premiered at Cannes, and the response was best described as tepid.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of this is disappointing. So for me, who is going to go see it this weekend on the East Coast when I'm in Cape Cod with renowned producer Jonathan Gabay. I was really I was always going to go, obviously I'm going to go see the movie, but I was a little bit bummed. And when I watched your 90-second reaction where you both were really happy and Shannon said there's some quibbles, maybe one big quibble and a lot of small quibbles, but it's not Crystal Skull. And you both came out satisfied.
Satisfied. Yeah, I would say that's true. I would absolutely 100% say that's true. But let's look at these 4 movies. So I think all of us have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at the bottom. Yes, I think we would
Not
say
me.
that. Yes. Not you?
Nope. Nope.
Are you joking?
Raiders is the bottom.
Wow, there it is.
I'm kidding. Of course Crystal Skull's in the bottom. Get out of here.
Vogel thought we were starting with the best.
Oh, no, never. You never go that direction.
Yes, Crystal Skull is the less said about it, the better. But let's say some stuff about it.
Yeah, like what is there anything redeeming about Crystal Skull? You've got Mutt, Shia LaBeouf. You do have a Kate Blanchett coming in with that accent of hers. We get a Ray Winstone out of nowhere. We also have the return of Marion Ravenwood. And we get monkeys and snakes and this weird
Ants.
plot with aliens. And it's set in the 1950s, guy. So is there anything redeeming about this movie that has been so vilified over the years, gentlemen?
I don't hate the opening.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't hate the whole opening. And look, Steven Spielberg has spoken about this a lot. I really hated the aliens a lot when I saw it. But I think, and in retrospect, I think a lot of that is also just really poor execution. Like, what the fuck is going on? Right. What Spielberg and Lucas have both sort of said is that Indiana Jones was really based on like the serials of the 30s and 40s. And like the adventure serials and, going to the jungle and finding treasure and all that kind of stuff. And then when they're like, oh, well, Harrison Ford is older, let's set this in the 50s. The 50s was drive-through movies and aliens. And so like, they were like, well, let's make it sort of inspired by the movies that were out at that time. Let's go alien. Yeah. I don't think that that's, as an idea, a completely out of left field, horrible idea. I think the execution makes it horrible. I think that, the beginning is, it's sort of like the law of diminishing returns of that movie. The opening is fun. Kate Blanchett's Kate Blanchett, so I always love her, no matter what, bad haircut and all. And then you get to the whole Mutt college chase motorcycle thing where you're like, okay, that's a fun action sequence. Spielberg does action sequences well. It's fine. As soon as they get to South America, just downhill.
Yeah. Shannon?
Agreed. I think that opening action sequence, Indy is a little too willing to help. That's not the Indiana Jones that we knew at the beginning with the first 3 movies. I mean, you look at why he did what he did. With the Ark, he was going for something of historical significance.
Right.
With Temple of Doom, he's going because he wants to help this village, but also they're not going to give him a guide until they get this stone back. And Last Crusade, it's to rescue his dad. His reasoning for helping the Russians find this skeleton is not great, because we find out Mac, played by Ray Winstone, immediately turns on him, and we find out he's been working with the Russians, and it's like, you're a little too willing and a little too enthusiastic, because like, give me this, I need gunpowder. It leads into a fun sequence. Like, the sequence itself is fun. Where it does kind of drop the ball a little bit is they do address his age. It's very funny, but it's not really a thing. I mean, the main thing is like he whips that hanging light and he misses the truck. Like, damn, I thought that was closer. That is pretty much the end. And Shia LaBeouf makes some cracks about his age. The nuking the fridge, that for me was just one step too far. I was like, oh my gosh, like I get that you wanted this visual of the mushroom cloud and the silhouette of Indiana Jones. Like, that's cool. I don't think we needed to do that, because it was just so it just, for me, it put the audience off like right away. Getting to the mutt, like the idea of Shia LaBeouf playing a greaser, I'm like, I don't have an issue with this. Shia LaBeouf's a great actor. Like, he gets dinged a lot for this movie, and I don't think his performance is not the issue. Why that didn't work. I mean, it is what he was given, and it's the movie, and it's in its whole. And the whole greaser fight, I actually thought that was really fun. And the chase itself, really fun. Really stupid shot when they're in the library and they spill the bike, and you see them on the slowest cable in Hollywood history going through. I'm like, that is terrible. Like, you should know that's terrible. And we get a brief cameo from Tom Hanks' troubled son. Once they do get to South America, the movie does take a really big nosedive, unfortunately. And some of the newer performers, actors that we got, they just didn't fit. And it's not that they're not good actors. They just didn't fit in the world. Ray Winstone just didn't fit. Jim Broadbent didn't fit. I mean, the whole thing where he's like, Indy, I resigned, like, at the beginning. And it's just like, we don't know you. Like, it doesn't, it doesn't matter. The end where the fedora blows off as Indy and Marion are getting married, and you see Shia pick up that hat in a sold-out screening, which I imagine the 3 of us were together. You heard an audible no from the crowd as Shia starts to put that hat on, because that was the rumor, is that he was going to take over. The movie is fine to revisit for sequences. But ultimately, it's almost like Harrison Ford forgot how to be Indiana Jones in certain parts. Like, the whole thing of him saying intolerable, like they're trying to all right, you're turning more into your dad. It's like, no, he's got to be Indy. He's not Henry Jones Sr.
Have I told you guys?
Diatribe on the worst film. We got 3 to go.
I'm sorry.
Have I told really quick? I know we're running a little over
time. Let's go.
Have I told you? Have I told you this is good? Have I told you my Patton Oswalt story? Oh, that right after we saw. Go ahead. Yep. Right after we saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was working at Sony at the time, and I had a work breakfast with Patton Oswalt, and I was really excited. I got to meet Patton Oswalt. He's really funny. So Crystal Skull was topic of conversation, and he said something that I've never forgotten. And he was like, "I'll tell you how you know this movie's garbage." And I go, "How?" He goes, "The closing credits." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "End of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Marion and Indy walk down the hill. We pan onto this box. It's the Ark. You pan out. You see all the stuff. Bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-na-na-na." And I'm like, yeah. He goes, "Temple of Doom. They bring the kids back. They bring the stones back. He kisses Kate Capshaw. There's an elephant. Bum-ba-na." He's like, "Last Crusade. Literal sunset. Riding on horses into the sunset. Bum-ba-na." He goes, "Crystal Skull. Old people walk out of a church. Bum-ba-na." He goes, "You tell me which one doesn't fit." I've never forgotten that. It is very accurate.
That is accurate for sure. I don't think I can add more to what these 2 gentlemen said about it. I have way less to enjoy about it than these two do, because I just think it's so not an Indiana Jones film. It's like cosplay. It's a really good attempt, but at the end of the day, it's missing the spirit and the soul of what makes Indiana Jones so great, for sure. And I would add one extra character to Shannon's points. I would add Shia LaBeouf doesn't fit either. As good as he's trying to be in that film, I don't buy him as Indy's son and Marion's son for sure. Yeah, I agree with you on Ray Winstone and Jim Bravo. It just felt like, and why would you introduce a character as a plant to turn on Indy that we have no history with? It doesn't make any sense. Just Indiana Jones knowing him is not enough in a situation like that. You've got to do more. And to lead to aliens, I think you have to have had planted that for quite some time through the 3 movies. So when that moment happens, we have some history to get to, even if you stumbled all the way down to that moment in South America, we at least would have had some historical connection.
Yeah.
All right. So what's number 3 for you guys? Shannon, I go to you first.
It would be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Well, are we including Dial of Destiny in this?
Not yet.
Or not yet.
We'll do that at the end. But yes,
it's Temple of Doom. It is Temple of Doom, definitely.
Mikey, same?
I think it's Temple of Doom for all of us, yeah?
Yeah. Fair point.
But I will say, I think for me and Shannon, it's a higher number 3 than it is for John.
Yeah,
it's a number 3 with an asterisk for John.
It's just tough to watch. It's tough to watch.
To this day, love it. I think it has one of the greatest. I still think it's one of the greatest opening in movie. I think the entire opening with Anything Goes and
great.
The bar in Shanghai and the Club Obi-Wan. Like, I think that's all. It's an amazing opening sequence. It's great. And despite John's not incorrect issues with some of the race stuff, I think Short Round, like when I was a kid, I loved Short Round. So I still love Short Round. I now see why Short Round is a problematic character, but I've always loved him and seeing this kid that got to work with Indiana Jones. And there's some great action sequences. Like, this is still real peak director Spielberg, despite some of the problematic issues looking back on it from 2023.
Yeah, that's the hard part of it, because it is a prequel apparently, and
it
is a little bit, for me, it's more a matter of the white savior complex, and he's got to get these things, and the Indian villain. Look, we eat monkey brains. There's just some stereotype of this stuff, and yes, it's of its time, right? It's the 1980s. Certainly, there were evolved people who could have done a better job if you had gotten technical assistance on it. But unfortunately, that wasn't the situation for a lot of movies back in the 1980s. So you kind of have to forgive it a little bit for that. But for me, the magic starts to wear off as it goes along. It's just not as interesting. The heart being pulled out, it doesn't have the same magic. But the bridge sequence, that is awesome. The bridge sequence is a great action sequence for sure. So there are things to enjoy within the movie. I just think the overall stuff for me in 2023 and really the last few years when I've taken a look at it just doesn't 100% hold together. But we may be watching it, the 3 of us, again down the road soon, so we shall see. But Shannon,
I'm saving. I've got a silver bullet. I'm gonna save it for that. I don't want to use it here.
That's gonna be fun.
Yes, the minecart chase. I mean, that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, like, why is there not a ride at Disney for this? And I think comedically, Harrison Ford is just hilarious in this movie, despite the fact that it is exceptionally darker. The moment as the spikes are coming down and he's trying to get Willie to grab the lever on the other side, and that I have the gif of Willie, we are going to die. And it holds on him for a second and he tucks his bottom lip out, and it is something that makes me laugh every single time.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a way to talk about the Kate Capshaw situation in 2 ways. One, she did an excellent job for what she was asked to do in the movie. I just think turning her into the screaming damsel in distress was just too much for me throughout the whole film, especially considering what had happened with Marion Ravenwood, which we've already discussed and had battles about. So yeah, that's another part of it as well. All right, let's move on to our number 2, which is, I think this is where it comes to debate.
This is where it comes to the debate. This is what we're waiting for.
All right, Shannon, you had the first crack at 3, so Michael, your crack at 2. What's your number 2?
Raiders.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Raiders. Yeah. All right. Well,
now look, this is a hotly debated thing. Like, I get it. Raiders of the Lost Ark made Indiana Jones what he is. It's a movie like no other. It came out and everyone's like, I've never seen anything like this. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think it's amazing. I actually have nothing bad to say about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, you can bring up the entire argument that people love to bring up, which is, had Indiana Jones not been in this movie, the Nazis would have gotten the Ark, they would have taken it, they would have opened it, they would have died. So did Indiana Jones really accomplish a lot? You could debate it, but it's a hell of an adventure. And so I love Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I just love Last Crusade a little bit more.
Fair enough. I agree. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is a great start to that, to the franchise, of course, from the opening there with the great Alfred Molina in a very small role, the boulder, the idol, everything. The writing on the girl's eyelids, the introduction of Indy and this kind of guy who wants to be wanted. This is peak Harrison Ford, and he's got that swashbuckling thing down to a T. The introduction of Marion Ravenwood and that drinking contest is so great. Malak and all of them, the way they get introduced and weaved into this works so well. The action sequences, the genius of the plot and how they get to the Ark, I thought worked so well as you're watching along, trying to figure it out and trying to solve this thing as well to get to the Ark. It works so well. The chemistry with all the actors. And then we get to that finale, which is really insane, which is why when people start to bash India, I'm going, listen, ghosts came out of an Ark. Okay. Like, you can't be talking to me about metaphysical shit, not being a part of Indiana Jones. Been it since the first movie. And that scene is scary AF, and it still is scary AF when I watch it. So that's what I'll say.
That man melts like a Yankee candle.
Well, I will talk about Raiders now, as it is my number one, but then I'll get to so Raiders is my number one just because, as much as I love Last Crusade, this is something that flips on the daily. There are some days where I prefer Last Crusade. There's other days I prefer Raiders. I think right now, ever since we saw Dial of Destiny, I am very much on a Raiders kick as the thing that started it all. And I think it really played, with the exception of the end, which does get a little larger than life, but it works. They're playing this movie as reality. I mean, it is a very a lot of the action, with the exception of the truck chase, a lot of the action, they are doing so much of that in camera. It's all real. And it's like a lot of this could actually happen. I mean, the discovery of Indiana Jones as a character, I mean, he's just so captivating. The whole sequence with the Well of the Souls, it's really just opening the door to this bigger world. And I love Indiana. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark so much. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, let's move on to our number ones and Shannon's number two, and that is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. If you all don't mind, I'll go first here. And I'll keep it quick. I just love this chemistry of him and Sean Connery, as someone who had a very strong, overbearing dad who seemed to know better about everything than you did. People seemed to love him more than they loved you. It was something that I navigated in my life for a very long time. And so to see that coming through in 1989 and to every time watch it ever since my father has passed, there has a magic to it. It's a realness to it, even though they were like, 6 years age difference or 7 or 10. It wasn't that big, their age difference. It works so well. And this is Sean Connery at the reemergence of Sean Connery, the renaissance of Sean Connery. And he is so believable. He's so sweet. He's so tender, yet a hard ass in certain moments as well when he needs to. And there's no moment to me that beats him saying Indiana in that moment when he's holding on to Indy as he's trying to reach for the Grail. And you see that even the great Indiana Jones can revert back to being someone who wants to satisfy his father and his desire for that Grail at the same time. And there's just such a magic to that movie. Seeing the Knights, I'm such a fan of the Knights of the Holy Grail and all that. The cup, the Christ cup, being myself Catholic, growing up Catholic, there's a real connection to that. So there's so much of this that works for me. Salah is really funny. So there's so much here that just really works for me. And the Hitler stuff is funny. Him autographing his book. The fact that they were sleeping with the same woman. I know now in 2023, some people might have an issue with it. I still like it. I still think it works. There's nothing wrong with both men being really good at picking up ladies. It's kind of fun aspect of the film. And all of that just works so well for me throughout in the script, the pacing, the direction, the fight with the Nazis in the tank, all of it, just 100%. Just has more magic to me in the way they ride off into the sunset. Dun, dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, dun, dun,
It's
dun, dun.
so good.
Yeah, look, I think that from the amazing opening sequence with the late River Phoenix and the entire like circus train, to the fact that Indiana Jones is on the hunt for his dad and it's a really personal thing for him. You know, the fact that his dad is scared of rats, the way that he's scared of snakes, the whole X marks the him in the beginning kind of saying, you know, don't confuse myth and legend with fact. X never marks the spot, and then have an entire search for the Grail where X absolutely marks the spot. Like it is a movie that is firing on absolutely all cylinders. And John is 100% right. We talk a lot of times about, you know, we're talking about, oh, what's the chemistry between this man and this woman? Is there fireworks? Is there sparks? There are sparks between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery in all the right ways. Every glance, disapproving glare that Sean Connery gives him, and the comedy. I mean, they nail it. Everything from like Harrison Ford, you know, no ticket. Or like Sean Connery in the biplane when he like shoots the back and he's like, son, I'm sorry. They got us. Like, it's just the comedy in this movie is golden. And it's so funny to me. It's a lot like I liken it to the Toy Story trilogy. Where you can't argue that Toy Story is the movie that started it all, not just for the Toy Story franchise, but for Pixar as a company. Like Toy Story is where it all began, but Toy Story 3 is these people know these characters and everyone's at the top of their game. And I think Raiders is a near perfect movie. It's the beginning of Indiana Jones. It's Spielberg and George Lucas right at that point in their careers. But Last Crusade is them being like, hey, we've taken a few years, we've learned some things, and we fucking know how to make a movie. And it's just flawless.
The flip back and forth between 1 and 2, you know, it is day to day, and because 1's 2 doesn't mean I like it any less. The chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery, it is just magical. I mean, the whole concept of who would be Indiana Jones's dad, James Bond.
Yeah,
I mean that whole idea is just so. What? Go ahead.
Particularly in a meta sense, because the entire reason that Indiana Jones exists was George Lucas and Steven Spielberg chilling out on a beach saying, what would our version of James Bond be? Yeah. And that's where Indiana Jones came from.
Just the magic between those two, having one movie to come in and just having just such a fully defined character, knowing that he's how much Sean Connery, Henry Jones Sr. values honor in battle. And when they have that motorcycle chase, which was added after the movie had been completed because there wasn't enough action, when Indy grabs that flagpole and goes into joust position and takes out the German motorcycle troop, and you see Sean Connery's elation at that happen, the next guy he takes out, he takes the remainders of his, you know, makeshift lance, tosses it in the wheel to see this guy, you know, just go ass over ankles. And Indy being so satisfied and Sean Connery not being happy about that. Like you have just sullied an honorable joust. It's just so good. The X marks the spot moment. Fantastic. River Phoenix doing such a believable young Harrison Ford. I mean, it was just so again, Raiders is a perfect movie. And I would say Last Crusade is a perfect sequel.
Yeah.
It's one of the best.
So I know we're running out of time, but I want to hear from you two. Like, so where for you two on this list does Dial of Destiny fall in?
Well, it's number 3 for me because I really enjoyed it. I again went in thinking it was going to be a crap fest that I would have to convince myself to like, but I found myself just naturally and organically enjoying the hell out of it. The way they played it, leaned into his age and made that a thing. The de-aging worked. Toby Jones coming in, you know, whereas you introduce Ray Winstone out of nowhere, Toby Jones coming in out of nowhere works so much better. And then the connection to Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and she is just fantastic in the film. And I saw some people who hadn't seen the movie complaining about a certain thing that she does to Indiana Jones. It works in the fucking movie. So I love the way it does. And yes, where it ends up, yes, it is what it is. And I liked it. So to me, it took me up, swept me up. And I think Shannon's 100% right. It made me want to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark again, because I think this is the first one that really evokes that one linearly in terms of the style and approach to making that movie. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, hearing words like disaster coming out of the screening, I went in with a very lowered bar, and with that lowered bar, had a fantastic time. Where Jim Broadbent and Ray Winstone and John Hurt didn't exactly fit, Toby Jones and Phoebe Waller-Bridge absolutely fit. Antonio Banderas, he's not a big part in the movie. He fits in that world. Yeah. And I would say Mads Mikkelsen, that's the second best villain of the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good statement to make.
So where is it for you, Shannon?
Yeah, where's it for you?
It is number 4. It is number 4 because there are, it goes for some big swings that are not going to work for everyone. And I will be able to tell you more the reason why it's number 4 for me when we do our spoiler review. Why it does not eclipse Temple of Doom.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have Michael on for the spoiler review, as Michael is going away for a week. But another Michael, we are negotiating to join us for it, and that's Michael Kalinowski. So look for our announcement for that spoiler review happening sometime this weekend or Monday as you're watching this. This
for the best. Michael and I have a restraining order against each other. We're not allowed to be in 30 feet of each other's podcasts. So I'll stay on the East Coast while he joins you guys, and then I'll come back for everything after that.
But I'm sure you can, after you watch it in Cape Cod, you can record a quick 90 seconds about what you thought with some scenic Cape Cod in the background. Yeah,
I might put on some fancy Cape Cod glasses, pour myself a cocktail, and have listen. Renowned producer Jonathan Gabay will be there, so he can produce. He can produce my Indiana Jones review that I will send to you guys.
See if we get Zack Snyder for that too.
We're gonna get so many eye rolls texted to us when he listens to this thing.
But he will secretly love it.
He will. Yeah. Definitely record something, Michael. We'll put it up. Because that's not what I hear about the restraining order with you two. All right. Anyway, let's get on out of here. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Geek Buddies. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung, on Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @TheRochaSays.
Mikey?
And listen, while you are doing all that and all that really fun following, go ahead and hit that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content he has got there. Leave your comments below. What's your ranking of the Indiana Jones movies? What do you think about what James Gunn said? How is that Superman casting? Which trailer are you excited for? And what do you think of Tron? Let us know all of that below. If you are listening to us on a podcast form, go ahead and leave us some stars and some comments so we go up in the rankings. If you're not listening to us on podcast, go over to Realm TV and find us and listen to us. We would really appreciate it. And if you have done all of that and you still want more to do, go ahead and share this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
Boy, it was a little bit like but he got control of the wheel, so I appreciate it.
You went a little like that. It was like, oh, we're back on.
It's like flying with Shannon McClung. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. We love you madly. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of the
Geek
Buddies.
Hey!